Now that we've got our window up and nicely centered, let's put a grid in it so that we can start putting up some goats. First, we have to make a grid object. I'm going to store the reference to that in a variable of type grid. And we have to give the grid object some information about itself when we create it. We have to define some rows. You do that with the row definitions property. And be careful when you type this in, because you'll see that the prompt from Visual Studio Code starts with row definition, singular. You actually want row definitions, plural. And then you're going to use a method in that class called parse. And the argument to parse is a string. It has all kinds of actual different options you can use to decide the sizes of rows. We're going to use one of the simplest, just the asterisk. That means we want one row to use all the space available in the window. You follow that with a comma. Do something similar for column definitions. But we want 9 columns, one space for all of the 8 goats and the space they need to jump over each other. So we'll do parse, and then we'll say star, comma, space, star, comma, space. Total of 9 asterisks. Check my work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Notice that I did not put a comma after the last one. That won't work. I will put a comma here after column definitions. Now, to put the grid in the window, we use the dot to get access to the variables inside the win object. One of them is the content property. We'll assign the grid to be the window's content. That should do it. Let's run the program and see what happens. Well, that looks exactly the same as before. We really don't have any way to know if it worked. Now, it did work, but we can't see anything that tells us that. So it's always a good idea to make a change, one or two, that definitely will look different if your program has successfully been modified and the modification has the effect you want. So let's start with giving it a background color. We can choose from all the built-in brushes. I kind of like the orange one, so we use that. And you probably won't use this feature much in production programs, but when you're developing, it's helpful to see the grid lines that separate the individual cells in the grid. So we'll say show grid lines equals true, and run that. Excellent. Now we can see we've actually got one row, 9 columns. The grid lines show us where the boundaries are, and we got a nice orange background, definitely confirming that our grid is now in the window. That finishes that step.